It's official. For the first time since I was 13 years old, the Kansas City Chiefs are not in the playoff picture. But guess what? They're kind of a side gig with this 2025 NFL season because there was a lot, and I mean a lot of fun stuff to talk about in this episode for the Week 18 season finale recap. Here we go. I'm excited. Let's roll the intro.
KC Karate Kid with the arrow and chop. Nobody can touch us when it's lonely at the top.
All right, so we're going to start with some games that, it's week 18 and a lot of games just honestly don't really matter. Maybe a little bit for draft pick seeding, but we're going to mention a few games right off the bat here before we get to the real important ones that we can just go by quickly. So let's start with Browns-Bengals. The Browns end up getting a nice dub to end their season, 20-18. Two things to talk about from this game, both Browns-based. Obviously, the first one, Myles Garrett gets the single season sack record. And you know what? I don't really care that much about the Browns in general, but just to see a player make history like that, especially so individually, is always awesome to see. So 23 sacks on the season. It was funny because it kind of felt like Joe Burrow at the end of that fourth quarter gave it up to him, and he kind of sensed Myles Garrett behind him, and he was like, you know what, I'm just going to give it to him. And you know what, props to Myles Garrett. He had one of the best releases off the line to get to Burrow on that play, so awesome to see there. The other thing is Kevin Stefanski was fired. I disagree with the decision from the Browns, but at the end of the day, it's how business is run in the NFL, in that if something is not going right for a long period of time, sometimes the GM, the owner, they're going to make a decision and to make a change. I don't think Kevin Stefanski at all was the problem. I know some Browns fans would disagree, but it's just what happens. He will definitely get a head coaching job somewhere else, and let's move on. Okay, and then Cowboys-Giants. The Giants just love to do this. They have so many wins in the past few seasons in week 17 and 18 just to ruin their draft position. They had a chance going into week 18 to actually have the first overall pick. Now, it was unlikely, but they had the chance. And now they have the 5th overall pick because they beat the Cowboys 34-17. A positive to take out is that Jackson Dart had a really nice game. He had some nice improvisational plays. But at the end of the day, it's just so Giants and so funny to see that outcome come draft night. And then the Vikings beat the Packers 16-3. Now, I get it. The Packers had their third string quarterback in. Shout out Clayton Tune. Is this the most quiet 9-8 winning season we've ever seen from a team? I don't think it's going to be mentioned outside of Vikings fans this entire offseason that they somehow got a winning record. And shout out to myself. It was a hard season to predict overall in terms of records because everything was just so crazy. But I got two teams right this year. The Dolphins at 7-10 and the Vikings at 9-8 because that's what they do. They go out, they win 13, 14 games, and they go right back to 8 or 9 wins. So there you go. And this game mattered a little bit. Jags-Titans 41-7. The Jags just continue to do what they do, have complementary football, really, really balanced run and pass game as well. Trevor Lawrence went out there and had the most amount of touchdowns in a single season by any Jaguars quarterback. So that was huge. And they just went up and beat up on a bad team, which is exactly what they needed to do to go into the playoffs. And now they're going to host a playoff game. So the Jags were dominant. Cam Ward, hope he rests up this offseason. He did get an injury in the first quarter of that game, but he had a nice end to his season. 10 touchdowns, 1 pick in the last few games. So you really saw an improvement from him. As we move on to Rams-Cardinals. 37-20. The Rams definitely took care of business because they came off of a rough loss against the Falcons where they almost made a comeback, but then still lost to a team which on paper should be inferior to them, which kind of ruined any chance of them hosting a playoff game. But here, they got the 5 seed, which is huge because playing Carolina is much better than playing Philly or Chicago. I think Matt Stafford just did enough to get the MVP back. He had 4 touchdowns in this game. All of them came pretty much later on. I think Patriots fans, I saw this on social media, they were pretty pissed because all of the touchdowns that Matt Stafford had were like 5 yards, 7 yards, 12 yards. And they were like, this guy is dinking and dunking his way to come back up and get MVP. And I'm thinking to myself this entire time, touchdowns are touchdowns. They're hard to get in the NFL. Like, he had 46 of them total this season, so he's still been great. And second of all, Drake May just last week against the Jets had 5 touchdowns, where pretty much all of them were also dinking and dunking. So you can't really say that, Patriots fans. I know you're mad that your young guy probably now won't go out and get the award, but Stafford's older. He's never won it. He had a great season. Drake May has plenty of other opportunities. So I just thought that was funny. I swear, guys, I'm not just saying this because it's recency bias. This has to be a top 5 worst game I have ever watched in my entire life. You know what I'm talking about. Buy the jersey. It's Chiefs Raiders 14-12. No touchdowns scored in this game. Each team had 4 field goals each. The Raiders won basically by a safety. And my God, I mean, is there any worse way to try to close out possibly Travis Kelce's career? And I really hope that wasn't the end of it, because 3 catches for 12 yards, where his final catch came on a, you know, one of those plays where they just start lateraling it to each other and it's the end of the game. You already know you're lost, so you're just desperate. That was his final catch, possibly, of his career. Was a dump off for 2 yards where Travis Kelce's like, here, just take it, because I guess we're still trying to win on this final play. That doesn't matter. Final catch, by the way, from Shane Buechele of all quarterbacks. And just one of the worst efforts I've ever seen put out by a team. I didn't think that game that I went to against the Titans could be topped. But this one won it. And to think that we almost ruined our draft pick by Harrison Butker making that field goal at the end, that would have been the cherry on the top for one of the worst Chiefs games I've ever seen. I mean, it still was, but overall, what the heck was that? I don't want to ever rewatch that game. And yes, going back to Travis Kelce, if there's one thing I could say, as a Chiefs fan, he's done everything for this organization. He's brought so many amazing moments. He's one of my favorite players of all time. He's a great dude. If I had to send him off, I would just say, do whatever is best for you mentally and physically. Now, selfishly, I don't want that to be the end of his career. I would love for him to come back for one last ride with Mahomes, even if it's a loss in the wild card. That's anything better than what happened in this game. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he pulls a Gronk. Al and I were talking about this off camera. Maybe he comes back, after Thanksgiving. He's nice, well-fed, spending time with family. And he's like, you know what? Chiefs are looking good this year. Let's make a playoff run. But yeah, that's the only thing I can take from this game is just watching Travis Kelce not get targeted for some reason. Thank God for Daniel Carlson hitting a 60-yard field goal at the end of the game. And now the Chiefs actually have a top 10 draft pick. So that's going to be fun to watch. We'll have plenty to talk about that in the offseason. Let's move on to Commanders-Eagles. 24-17, the Commanders win this one. Basically, it was the Eagles' backups against Josh Johnson in the Commanders. So the game itself really had nothing to it. The only thing I would note from this is now that the Eagles lost. They've solidified the 3 seed, an 11-6 record. So we'll see what happens. We're going to talk about the wild card in the next episode. So honestly, other than congrats to the Commanders for finishing strong, I guess, with your backups, let's move on. Okay, and then speaking of Drake May, 38-10, they beat the Dolphins. Like I said earlier, the Dolphins fall to 7-10, got that one right. Patriots secure the 2nd seed. They had a nice blowout win at home, exactly what they need to carry on more momentum to play the Chargers next week. Drake May didn't really have to do much in this game. It was a big Ramondre Stevenson game, a big defensive performance. This is exactly what the Patriots keep needing to do. They beat up on the Jets, they beat up on the Dolphins. I know they're easy teams to play against late in the season, but in order to remain that confidence going into the playoffs, this is exactly what needed to happen. So a really good win for the Patriots. And then the Broncos, speaking of securing a seed, this one was important. They got the 1 seed, 19-3. It was an ugly game. All they really needed was that great pick 6. They benched Bo Nix after 1 or 2 drives. And honestly, they didn't even need Bo Nix because they played against Trey Lance, who, by the way, I get it. Backups, bad offensive line, playing against the Broncos defense, but man, if Trey Lance really wanted to prove something there, he just didn't do himself justice. That was a rough game. The only other thing I'll say about this game is great uniform matchup. One of the best of the season. Love the classic throwbacks, and I don't know if they let him do this in the playoffs, but I hope they let the Broncos wear it at least once at home, maybe in the divisional round. All right, and then the final game, pretty much at Highmark Stadium, the Bills absolutely destroy the Jets 35-8. I said 31-0, and it was a shutout for most of that game. So I was like, wow, I might actually get this right. But regardless, this just proves once again how horrific, and that's not an understatement, guys. The Jets are one of the worst teams I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that they even won 3 games this year is a miracle. They put up 8 points against Mitch Trubisky. I get he doesn't play defense, so I don't know why I mentioned him first. But they put up 8 points against the Bills' backups. That just shows the discrepancy between these two teams. Final game at that stadium, they served over 50 years of memories and history. So that was a good way to end it, even if it was with the backups. And now the Bills secured the 6th seed, and it's up to them to really get it done in the playoffs, which we'll talk about more in next episode. All right, that was pretty much all the games that didn't have too much meaning to them. Now going all the way back, we had 2 Saturday games, starting with Panthers-Bucks. Now the Bucks did win 16-14, but it doesn't matter because we'll tie in these 2 games. The Saints lost to the Falcons 19-17, and if you guys didn't know, everything relied on that Falcons game if the Bucks ended up winning the Panthers game. That's exactly what happened. By the way, like, even if the Bucks snuck into the playoffs, just watching that game for both teams, there is absolutely no shot they're doing anything in the playoffs. I mean, the Bucks just looked weak. They were slogging their way through that. It felt like anytime they had any semblance of hope to really pull away, their defense then gave up some nice plays for the Panthers. And it was just really, really ugly, and it felt like Baker was pretty helpless throughout the game. His offensive line was still bad in this one. The Falcons did the Panthers justice in this one because I was rooting for the Falcons. I like the Panthers more than the Bucks. They're one of my favorite NFC teams, and it's just nice to see a more of an underdog story. Now, I get it. They were 8-9 this season, so it's not like they were like an underdog that ended up being good. But for expectation going into the season for the Panthers, even if you're 8-9, to go out and host a playoff game now for Bryce Young, that's got to raise the confidence for not only the players, but for the fans, for the organization. So I feel like this is a much-needed break gone the Panthers' way because this is the first time now they're in the playoffs since 2017. So overall, that makes me happy. I feel like the Bucks, this is not the worst thing to happen because, one, they should really take a hard look at firing Todd Bowles. Now, I have a lot of respect for Bowles. He's been in the league for a long time. Really good defensive coordinator. Had a couple of nice seasons for the Bucks, and he was defending himself on a previous press conference saying, hey, we won the division 3 years in a row with me at the head coach. I feel like I should have a little more leeway and, stay with the team. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to lean that the Bucks are going to keep him, even though fans are going to hate that. And I would disagree with it as well. There still needs to be some real coaching changes and some scheme changes because you cannot let a team with this much talent, when healthy, skid like that. They started 7-2, ended 8-9, ended up missing the playoffs. So I think missing the playoffs hopefully will give that team a little kick, a little boost to really realize some things this offseason, sharpen up, and go on another playoff run next year. But listen, good for the Panthers. Let's move on to Seahawks-Niners, the Saturday night game. 13-3 was the score. Shout out Super Bowl 53, Rams-Patriots. Man, I mean, if you love defense, this was the game for you. I think overall, just competitively, it felt a little disappointing. There was a lot of hype going into this. I really thought the 49ers had a great chance. I picked them to win this game. They were on a hot streak. They were looking great on offense. They were at home. So a lot of factors led me to believe this game at least was going to be a little more competitive. You got to give all the credit to the Seahawks defense. I mean, incredible, not only tackling, but just penetration to the gaps from the linebackers. It just felt like anywhere laterally on the field that the 49ers were trying to go just was closed up immediately by these guys hitting the gaps, getting the right angles. Just basically what I'm mentioning with all these words is that the fundamentals of the Seahawks defense, which has been really, really solid all season, finally showed out in the moments that matters most. Because not only do we see their defense become one of the most scary units in the NFL on Saturday night, but that overshadowed the fact that Sam Darnold, who a lot of us were worried about not only this season as a whole, but going into a game like this, because this game mirrored last season with the Vikings a lot. They had 14 wins. They were going into Week 18 in a primetime game against their rival away to try to get the 1 seed. And Sam Darnold crapped his pants last year. But this year, he was an elite game manager. He made no mistakes. Yes, he wasn't flashy. He wasn't amazing. But that is a huge improvement from what we saw last year. So overall, the fact that this defense can kind of overshadow a guy that we're a little more worried about in Sam Darnold, mixing that With Sam Darnold not giving the game away, this team has proved now in a big moment, especially now that the playoffs are going to run through Seattle, they might be the scariest team in the NFC. So a huge win, not only just for seeding in general, but for the confidence of these Seahawks players. What a dominant performance. For the 49ers, however, man, it was really tough. Like, they just couldn't get anything going. It just felt like every yard was so hard to get. I do think they have a really good shot at beating the Eagles. We'll talk about that next episode, but overall, that was tough to see. I know they dealt with a lot of injuries. They got a couple more on defense in this one, so that's really going to hurt them. But for me, moving forward with the 49ers, it's really going to depend on how Brock Purdy can manage the game to make enough plays if their defense isn't an absolute collapse in their next few games, they can still have a real shot because they were on a hot streak. I'm not going to forget it. We'll see what happens, but man, what a game. Let's move on to Texans-Colts. 38-30, the Texans win it, and it was close. I mean, the Texans are known for having pretty much the best defense in the NFL. They give up 30 points to Riley Leonard, a rookie quarterback who, by the way, I know he ended the game with that bad turnover that led to, the Togiai touchdown, which was pretty cool, the big man touchdown. And he did have a fumble early on in the game as well. But he kind of showed quietly, like, listen, you definitely should weigh out all your options if you're the Colts this offseason in terms of your quarterback. But he kind of earned his way to be maybe one of those options. I know he was a late round pick. I know this is the only game he started. But he kind of showed out against a pretty good defense. So that's going to probably confuse Colts fans first and foremost. But that should really show, hey, maybe you got something in this guy. For the Texans, however, I mean, they put up 38 points, and they benched C.J. Stroud in, the second quarter? So Stroud was probably disappointed, but there's a point where you realize, okay, we're rather going to get the 5th or the 6th seed, and I just feel like it's smarter to keep some star players healthy. So that's exactly what the Texans did. They still went out and won it, so that's huge because now they get to play in Pittsburgh, which I think is probably going to be easier than playing in Jacksonville. So good win for the Texans. As we move on to 2 more games left. Lions-Bears is your first one, 19-16. The Lions come out with the dub. The Lions have had a lot of ups and downs this season. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. There have been some coaching errors. Obviously a disappointment. Didn't make the playoffs. But, to go into Chicago and win a close game, end 9-8, you have a winning record. At least that's something, to go into next season. Now, the Bears have tended to do this a lot this season, and it does worry me. Listen, they've capitalized on a lot of big moments in close games, but a lot of the reason why these games have been so close is because their defense puts them in a little bit of a hole because they have been spotty. I know they're opportunistic. I know they make turnovers. Their secondary has not performed that well in a lot of spots this season, especially against really good offenses. So to go down 16-0 to start this game definitely shows a little bit of a red flag of what can happen. But at the same time, the fact that you did come back and almost win that game shows why the Bears are scary, why they have a lot of heart, and why they can make big plays when it matters most. So I'm always kind of up and down watching this team right now. Now, the only reason I'd feel a little more down is because it resulted in an L. I'm still keeping confidence that the Bears can host a playoff game going into wild card round and win it because they have a lot of talent. It does scare me that sometimes there are quarters where they just are completely helpless on offense, but they have proved enough this season where I'm sure they'll end up being fine. So this was kind of an interesting game to watch. The Bears got lucky that the Eagles lost, so they get to keep the 2 seed. Good for the Lions, ending on a high note, and we'll see what happens with the Bears in the playoffs. All right, and then the moment we've all been waiting for. What a game. What an ending for a rivalry, for the division, for your playoff life. Yes, of course, I'm talking about the Week 18 finale. Ravens, Steelers. The Steelers, they always do this. I pick them to lose, and look what happens. They win. This happens every single week. I am on and off with the Steelers. Everything I think that's going to happen is the complete opposite. I mean, this was a crazy way to end a season. I mean, 26-24 is the final score. If somehow nobody watched this game, here's what happened. Basically, it was exactly how Ravens-Steelers games go for about 3 quarters. It was low scoring, it was close, it was ugly, there was a lot of defensive football going on. It just felt like, okay, who's going to make the final big play on defense most likely, and who's going to come out with an ugly win, right? But no, this time, the offenses exploded in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson was finding wide open Zay Flowers on multiple touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers looked like Aaron Rodgers of 2020, throwing perfect dots on seam routes and fades. These offenses were doing stuff that I have not seen either of these offenses do all season. And it was like, what is going on? How is this going to end? And then it came down to the two kickers, which both of them have had great seasons. I mean, one who's had a great career in Chris Boswell, who missed an extra point, something he hasn't done since 2023 and never does often at all. I thought in that moment, oh my gosh, like that's how Aaron Rodgers' career could possibly end, is after actually coming up clutch in an offensive moment, his kicker lets him down. But then no, Tyler Loop stepped in. He's like, hold on, everybody. Stop the show and watch this, because I'm going to pull a Bills right here. Sorry, Bills fan. I didn't mean to catch a stray. But I'm going to pull this thing wide right on a 44-yard field goal. And I almost called it Heinz Field, but Acrisure Stadium is going to go nuts. I remember just thinking to myself, okay, if Boswell misses this would be the most Steelers thing ever. And then he missed it. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I just said that in my head. And then I was thinking, Tyler Loop, there's no way he misses this, right? Like, the guy with the last name Loop, like, that does kind of just sound like a guy who would miss a big field goal. But I don't know. It's a stupid thing I thought. But listen, it happened. First of all, I said this earlier about a Giants kicker against the Broncos in week 5 this season. Same thing goes for Tyler Loop. For anybody that is going into his DMs, into his comment section, into his girlfriend's Instagram comment section, saying death threats, you should have gotten a divorce, you sure you don't want to cancel the wedding, Tyler Loop, you make my life miserable, whatever it is, you are truly not a true NFL fan, and you're just a lowlife, because it is crazy what happened. There was over 15,000 comments in his girlfriend's Instagram page. I mean, a lot of it are Ravens fans. I put Ravens fans in F tier, and I feel pretty, secure in my opinion now after seeing what happened. I know it's not all Ravens fans, obviously. It's a very small portion, but it is crazy how... Listen, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here. Yes, football is a huge portion of my life. It's my number one passion, and I literally have a podcast on it for 3 years. But if you're that attached to an NFL team where it is ruining your life to the point where you have to go out and comment on a kicker for losing a game and send them death threats, you probably have to rethink a lot of things. So that was a crazy thing to see after this game. Overall, final thoughts. First of all, happy for Aaron Rodgers. If it is his last season, it's definitely cool to see him be able to play in one final playoff game. Mike Tomlin, I guess, is going to stay as the head coach. Didn't go 9-8, went 10-7 for the second year in a row. So there you go. For the Ravens, do I think they should fire John Harbaugh? Just hold on, releasing the recency bias, but doesn't matter. Yes, I do. He should be fired. It's not because I think he's a bad coach. I think he's going to be hired immediately if he gets fired. But I just think at this point, there has to be a change somewhere. Now, I understand it. He's not the one who missed the kick, and he helps draw the plays that get Zay Flowers open. But at the end of the day, there has to be one constant to losing all of these close games like this. And I know some of it's Lamar Jackson, some of it's the defense. Kyle Hamilton getting hurt was huge in this game. Derrick Henry did not have a great game as well. The coach is the constant here, and I said this all season, and I really do think they need to find something different, because what possibly is going to change next year? You tell me. Because what have I seen with my own eyes in the entire Lamar Jackson's career? It's just been blowing it after blowing it. And I just feel like at this point, I know there's trade rumors about Lamar Jackson leaving the team. No, I think you just need a fresh start in terms of coaching, get healthy, and move on. That's what I think. Terrible ending for the season for the Ravens. Great ending for the Steelers. We'll see what happens in the playoffs, because next episode, I can't believe we're already here, but that's our wild card predictions. So guys, thank you so much for an amazing regular season, as I'm so excited for this upcoming playoffs. If you guys are enjoying these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below your favorite moment from the entire regular season. Mine was definitely not a Chiefs moment, but if you guys are enjoying this content as well, we also have social media. We post clips, so go follow First and Gold on Instagram and TikTok. Happy New Year's, everyone, and we'll see you next episode for the wild card predictions. Goodbye.